Okay, boys and girls, let's pick up where we left off on our last video. So in the last video, I asked you to think about the relationship between marginal product and average product. And to focus on that graph and to see if you saw any type of connection. Well, here's what I want you to understand. While marginal product is above average product, you can see average product is increasing. And you see that in the increasing marginal return section. Then marginal product intersects average product, and then average product starts to go down because marginal product is now below it. So we can say that marginal product intersects average product at average product's highest point, right? And if we want to look at it another way, let's say that marginal product is every additional test you take, and that average product is your test average. So as every additional test you take is higher than your average, obviously your average will go up. Okay, until this point where we hit second semester senior, and now each additional test you take is lower than your average, and then therefore your average will be pulled down. Okay, so it's very important to understand that marginal product intersects average product at average product's highest point. All right, so now that we have that done, we want to go into the next topic, which is short run production cost. Okay, and what are the costs that we or a firm will incur in the short run? First one is fixed cost. Okay, we abbreviated TFC for total fixed cost. This is the cost that does not vary with output. Right? We have talked about fixed inputs like plant, which would be the fixed cost would be the rent on your store or your factory. Okay? So costs that do not vary with output. Then the next one is variable cost. Okay, and these are the costs that do vary with output. So TVC, total variable cost, is the money you pay for anything you use to produce the good. So if I'm making pizza, it's my workers, it's my electricity, it's my sauce, it's my cheese, it's my dough. All of those things go into making my product. If I didn't make the product, if there was zero output, I would only have to face the fixed cost. Okay, as I start to produce, now my variable cost comes into play. Okay, so it's the costs that vary with output. Then we look at total cost, which is TC. You'll happy to know that TC is the sum of the fixed cost and the variable cost. Right? So those two together give us our total cost. And we would abbreviate that with TC equals TFC plus TVC. All right, so let's graph total cost for a second. So here's our total cost graph, all right? What I want you to understand here is when you look at this curve, one of the questions that you'll see as we go through the year will be, is this the long run or the short run? And we've talked about long run and short run. That short run is when one of our inputs, usually capital, is fixed. And the long run is when all inputs are variable. Okay, there are no fixed inputs. So the first thing you do is you go to zero output, and there's a cost. So we haven't produced anything, so we have no variable cost, but yet we're paying $100, which means that's the fixed cost. This graph will then tell you that you are in the short run because there is a fixed cost. Right, and then we'll put the graph back up, but let's add in some more curves. So now I'm going to add in my total variable cost. So you notice the total variable cost comes out of zero because there is no cost unless there's output. So at zero, we have zero units, zero total variable cost, but 100 in the fixed cost. So TVC plus TFC, TFC being 100, TVC being 0, gives you total cost of 100. Right? Now, what you'll notice here is that, so this area is your variable cost. And then I have my total cost, which is there. The gap in between the two curves, the gap between total cost and total variable cost, is fixed cost. Right? All these are in totals. You see the arrows there. But we don't spend a lot of time focusing on total cost, total variable cost. What we want to look at is our per unit. All right, so we want to look at per unit or what we call average cost. So what we're going to look at first is our average fixed cost, which is AFC, which is total fixed cost divided by quantity. So what is my fixed cost per unit? That's what we're looking at. That's what our average means. Then we look at AVC, which is TVC divided by Q. And then we have ATC, which is total cost divided by Q. Quick little note here, it'll come up later. If I have average variable cost and I have average total cost, I do not need average fixed cost because the difference between these two is average fixed cost, right? Because average fixed cost plus average variable cost gives me average total cost. So I really only need these two to be able to figure out this one. Okay, and then we have what's called marginal cost, which is the change in total cost that occurs from a change in quantity. Okay, and so now when we have those, so marginal cost, like marginal utility or marginal product, is the change that's happening by doing something. So what is the additional cost of making that third or fourth slice of pizza? All right, so let's graph this. The first curve, we're not that concerned about. It's AFC. Okay, it's probably the first and only time you'll see it on the graph, right? Then we do average variable cost. Then we have average total cost. And you can see there that I have it labeled in between AFC. Okay, that's why we don't need the green one on the curve. And look, we know that the AFC is always going down, right? Because it's fixed. The total fixed cost doesn't change no matter what we do. So total fixed cost over quantity. So the numerator doesn't change, the quantity gets bigger, average fixed cost is always falling. However, with average total cost and average variable cost, they first begin to fall, then they rise. Okay, and the reason for that is diminishing marginal returns. Okay, and then we put the next one in and we have marginal cost. Okay, so marginal cost is the additional cost. ATC, AVC, and MC, you are going to see for the next probably 2 months. Okay, so get to know them and understand them because they're going to be that important. All right, so now let's talk about the relationship between production and cost. Okay, so the first graph I want to do is my marginal product. So as my workers are producing more, my additional cost is going to be less. Right, so as a worker is producing more, the marginal product is greater. As I hire more and more workers, the marginal cost falls. So these are mirror images of each other. When marginal product is at its highest, marginal cost is at its lowest. Then marginal product starts to decrease. Okay, so each worker is getting me less and less than the worker before, which means my cost per unit, my additional cost is starting to rise. Right, so if marginal product is falling, marginal cost is rising. Again, remember this as a mirror image. Now, this becomes important. We talked about this at the beginning of the video. Marginal product intersects average product at average product's highest point. Average product helps us find AVC. Okay, so if MP intersects average product at its highest, then we should understand that marginal cost will intersect average variable cost and average total cost at their lowest points. So as long as marginal cost here is below the AVC, it will pull AVC down. It intersects it at the lowest point, and then when MC is above AVC starts to rise. Okay, and if AVC and ATC, the difference between them is fixed cost, then ATC is going to go the same way. All right, we're going to leave that now, and when we come back in the next video, we're going to do long run production cost. Okay.